The Right Side with Doug Billings.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, we have it. The signed Epstein bill. We will see. We will see what happens. Coming up on The Right Side, shocking liberal calls for chaos and pain. Oh, really? That's their mantra. The chaos is their patron demon. We're going to tear down the nation. We're going to rebuild it. Mark Ruffalo, he gives his extensive wisdom on how to rebuild America. I'm going to expose the conservative mindset versus the liberal, how conservatives defend the Constitution and the founders, and how the liberal mindset wants to tear it down. Plus, in Texas, a bold move on terror. Ladies and gentlemen, The Right Side with Doug Billings is now upon you. Are you ready? Let's go.
My name is General Mike Flynn, and I'm here to do a big shout out to my great friend and one of the best in the business, Mr. Doug Billings.
This is The Right Side with Doug Billings.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, America. Hello, world. How are you? We're a week away from Thanksgiving. Hard to believe. Time flies, doesn't it? So in the midst of us preparing to give thanks for the nation that was founded by conservative values and by people who are escaping and fleeing tyranny, I'm going to cut through a lot of liberal spin today and tell you that and expose for you, again, the radical call of liberalism to tear down America through chaos, pain, and so forth and so on. Doug Billings here with you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again for joining us. The Real Talk Radio Network, where you get it. You get the truth. Unspun, unfiltered, and unapologetic truth. So let me reflect a bit with you on the Founding Fathers and the intent of the founders. Thanksgiving, just a few days away, 1 week away. Not just a day of feasting. It's a celebration of gratitude in this country, and we're gearing up for that. A celebration of the divine providence of God that guided the pilgrims and inspired our founders to craft the founding documents of a nation, of a republic, rooted in liberty, self-reliance, moral fortitude, Christian principles, the things that the liberals deny, the things that liberals omit and excommunicate from their own platform. God himself involved in the inspiration of this republic. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, John Adams, what did their counterparts and colleagues intend for us? A republic, most certainly. There's a big difference between a republic and a democracy. Make sure you are aware of that and educate your children and your families this year around the Thanksgiving table. This is a time where we've got to start talking about politics at the dinner table. I know. Oh no, Doug, don't ask me to do that. It's too rough. It's too tough. I've got several members of the family who are on the dark side. They're not over here on the right side yet. Well, they did. All of the founders. There are 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence. There are not a lot of people that know that. 56 men. But it's because we don't teach history anymore in this country. The history that we get is that America was built on the backs of slaves and we need reparations. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But as an Irish American, I can tell you, hey, my people built the railroads. We came over during the potato famine. Some of us were, hardworking and enslaved as well. I'm not calling for reparations. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. But the Pilgrims and the Founding Fathers, the 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence, envisioned a republic, not a democracy. And again, I'll point this out to you. You take note of every liberal that you see on television, and even many of our so-called Republicans refuse to call us by what we are, a republic. Purposefully not calling us a republic. Now, the Democrats have an excuse. They're given orders not to do that. They are. Every liberal in the elected class is under orders. You can better believe it. direct literal orders not to refer to America as a republic. Why? Because republic is the root word of Republican. And beyond the party system, I'm not talking about the Republican Party when I say this, we have a Republican form of government in this republic. Now, the radical liberal movement that is hell-bent on transforming America away from the intent of these 56 men, the founding fathers, they will not refer to us as a republic because of those reasons. It's the root word of Republican. Never mind that the founding fathers had specific and very passionate debates about not creating a democracy. I like what Elaine said on Facebook. Yes, let's talk about politics at Thanksgiving. That way you can save on Christmas presents. That's right. Separate the wheat from the chaff, Elaine, and save on your budget. There you go. I like the way you think. A republic is where the people have a voice. You know this. A democracy is where the mob rules. Liberals in today's show is about making sure that we're aware of, as we lead up to Thanksgiving, what these people went through and what it means for us today, more importantly, because American values are what the conservative movement in America is all about, not about fracturing or dividing us into factions, which is what the radical liberal movement not only wants, but they encourage. The founding fathers, every one of the 56 men who signed our Declaration of Independence, envisioned an exceptional America. They envisioned that shining city on a hill that Ronald Reagan so eloquently captured in his speech, which was drawn, by the way, from John Winthrop's Puritan ideals of early colonial America. But today, that vision is under assault from within and from without, pitting two fundamentally different worldviews against each other. We have, on the one hand, the conservative vision of order, of God's divine providence, and adherence to the founders' intent, versus the liberal push for chaos, transformation, and rejection of our exceptional heritage. And I'll always look at the worldview, me personally, I'll always look at the world and America's top stories of the news, our people, our ideals, and our culture through the founding fathers' lens of the creation of this republic for a secure, prosperous, and united nation. That's the worldview. And so starting with, you've got this liberal embrace of pain and chaos. Remember, to fundamentally transform America away from divine providence and the intent of the founding fathers, according to the liberal perspective, you can't do this without chaos. And ladies and gentlemen, you know, as we traverse the uncharted waters that the radical left want to try to throw upon us, I do want to mention to you again, my friends at Community Financial Services Group. I've got a friend, Brent Ewert. I've known this guy since the 4th grade. Not kidding, not kidding. Brent and his team have over 35 years of experience in the financial services industry, and they want to give you a complimentary review of your financial plan for yourself, for your wife, your spouse, your husband, your kids, grandkids. Maybe you're setting up college funds for your kids, for your grandkids, a will, trust, all of that good stuff. Brent and the team at Community Financial Services can help you out. They are based in the Show Me State, my home state of Missouri, but they can help you no matter where you live. Give them a call, 816-322-2760, 816-322-2760. Community Financial Services. Call them today and tell them that you heard about them on the right side. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, back to it. This cultural and political divide that we have in this nation from right to left, chaos versus pain, versus law and order. The radical liberal movement in America, just to set the table here for us as we, pun intended, as we are approaching Thanksgiving in America, 1 week away, and never too early to begin to be thankful. The radical liberal movement and agenda, quite honestly, and I want to say it clearly, calmly, passionately for you, they want to deconstruct America. Evidence of the obvious is sufficient. Everything they do, their policies, their procedures, their platform, designed to undo and turn away from what is represented in the foundation of this republic. It's as fundamental as them not, the liberals, not wanting to call us a republic. It's that fundamental, and it's that ridiculous. Case in point, ladies and gentlemen, just this morning, as I am doing my due diligence for you, and as I am taking upon my shoulders the pain of watching liberal news outlets, I do it for you so that you don't have to do it for yourself. I see this interview by Mark Ruffalo. Now, Mark Ruffalo, most famous for his role in the Marvel movies, Hulk. You know, he's really good at playing a green guy. He's out there pushing the idea of this painful transformation that's needed in America. And it illustrates this great divide between liberalism and conservatism, their worldview versus ours. Chaos and pain versus law and order. The liberal obsession that we have to inflict chaos and pain on America as a necessity, as a necessary evil to fundamentally transform our nation away from the divine providence of God and the intent of the founding fathers. And I'm not kidding you. That is exactly what the radical liberal platform is about. That is it. That is the bullseye of what they want. Case in point, as I say, Mark Ruffalo, in an interview just the other day, he laid it all bare when he called for, and I quote, reimagining what America is. Oh, yes. Perfectly timed the week before Thanksgiving. And he slammed capitalism as unsustainable. It's rich, folks. It's rich. Saying, and I'm quoting directly here, it's going to take some imagination, reimagining of what America is and what our economic system is, because what's clear is it's not working and it's not sustainable. Okay, so this is, it's such rubbish. It's hard to know where to begin, but he ties this all to the cycles of violence and pain. And he warns about normalized gun violence and institutional failures and so forth. He goes on in this interview, he's implying that upheaval, chaos, is part of breaking the system. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Mark Ruffalo. I have been saying this for 5 years, since the day that I started the right side. Chaos is their weapon of choice. It's their patron demon. It is what they want to do to us on purpose. Inflict chaos. And I put it to you. Look at everything the radical liberal movement has done over the last 5 years alone. Okay, not to mention throughout history. Just look at the last 5 years. I don't know, do you recall things like mask and jab mandates? Do you recall things like open borders and the utter chaos that created? What about the beautiful idea of defunding the police? How about weakening and wussifying our armed forces? Wussifying our men? Not even being able to define what a man or a woman is. How about introducing as many genders as you want? Sound familiar? Chaos, 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 from the adult level all the way down to children. Ruffalo references Gandhi in this thing. An eye for an eye just makes the whole world blind. I mean, it's that kind of. So then he pivots, though. And I'm going to let you listen to the interview. Hang on. I'm going to let you listen to the wisdom of Ruffalo. But he pivots to advocating for a complete overhaul of America, centering on the working class grievances that he claims exist out there, while ignoring the prosperity that capitalism has brought to America and to the world, for that matter. which, ladies and gentlemen, this all echoes again. And I've been redundant these last few days because I know that I've mentioned this on a few shows this week and last. But I want it to sink in, and I want you all to remember this and to be able to discuss it at your Thanksgiving table. Barack Obama was the first president to say out loud that America needed to be fundamentally transformed. And ladies and gentlemen, that statement, although it was couched as some sort of it was supposed to be branded as a friendly sounding campaign slogan. But fundamentally transforming America is the most anti-American statement that has ever been made by a president or anyone. America does not need to be fundamentally transformed. They were calling for the destruction of what Providence represents and what founders intended. And so when you hear that quote, fundamentally transform America, I want you to know that call, and it's used today in various forms, and people like Mark Ruffalo use it because Barack Obama is their messiah and they want to fulfill his promises. Your daily dose of intellectual maturity, where you become the most intellectually mature audience in all of radio land, for listening to The Right Side right here. Doug Billings with you. Thank you very much for standing with me as we try to recover the Republic. And we prepare to give thanks next week as Thanksgiving approaches us. Remember the chaos, because the liberals do. They plan the chaos. They incite the chaos. It's on purpose. And as a result of that, the border is opened is always, for me, it's the biggest example of the chaos that they caused. And as a result of the open borders, there are people in this country, my friends, who do not like us. And they want to hurt us. Not trying to fearmonger, just trying to make everyone aware so that we can be prepared for these kinds of things. There are people here that want to cause mass harm events. And I think that what you're seeing, at least in certain circles, is that the device that these people are planning on using, an electromagnetic pulse device, which is a system that can fry your electronics, doesn't do any physical damage to buildings and infrastructure, et cetera, but it'll kill your electronics, and it will prevent your vehicle from working unless you protect it. And so the good people at EMP Shield have created a device that you can connect to your car battery, your vehicle battery, your home outlets, to whatever you want to protect at home. The EMP Shield, EMPshield.com, ladies and gentlemen. Go over there. These are not outrageously expensive. And if you use the promo code PROTECT, you can get 10% off of their product over there. EMP, Electromagnetic Pulse, EMPshield.com. Let them know that you heard about them from The Right Side. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That's my public service announcement, just trying to make you aware and get you prepared. Back to it. All right, the radical left agenda. Chaos, arson, anarchy, riots, looting, theft of elections. Have you heard of these things? Do these things ring a bell? Mask mandates, jab mandates, all of the chaos that is cascaded down upon us. And then we see just yesterday, what was it, 6 or 7 senators, a mix of senators and representatives in the United States government, calling for the United States military to disobey your commander-in-chief. You don't need to follow orders. And this, it's an example of the chaos they try to create. Now, they may have philosophical or ideological disagreements with Trump. They just don't like the guy, let's be honest. But they're going out and telling the military to disobey orders crosses a line. That is sedition. That is treason. It is anarchy. And it's got to be addressed. And just to give you an example of the wussification of the people in this country, that when they hear about that, who might say, well, Trump's out there now calling to hang him. We can't have that. We can't have Trump labeling this as sedition and saying that they've got to be hung. Folks, I've got to remind you, people back in the time of the founding fathers said that kind of nonsense. At the very least, they would have been tarred and feathered. At the very most, they would have been executed. We have been so wussified in this country, so wussified by the radical left agenda, and we're afraid to call things out. We're afraid to. I don't understand why. And, earlier this year in Kansas, there was a satanic black mass held on the Capitol steps in Topeka. And we had our sitting governor, who is a communist socialist. I wouldn't expect her to condemn it, and she didn't. Well, we might not like what they say, but there is freedom of speech in this country, and blah, 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 blah. She was going to let them have the satanic black mass inside of the Capitol. She got so much pressure that she moved it. You guys got to have it on the outside. You got to have it on the steps. You can't have it inside. And then you got, the president of our Senate who's a Republican, quote unquote, Ty Masterson. Have nothing against the guy. He wants to be governor, but he's a member of the swamp, the establishment, who's been in politics for 15 or 18 years. And he only talks about change when election season rolls around, who also said the same thing. Well, we might not like what they say, but it's free speech. This is nonsense, ladies and gentlemen. The founding fathers had no intent for a satanic group to hold a black mass on the step of any Capitol. Why do these people not call this out? And again, in the time of our founders, if someone tried to do that, they would have been tarred and feathered in the very least of circumstances, and in the very worst, they may well have been executed. Now, I'm not advocating for the death of people, but I'm just telling you we have come a long way from the intent and the worldview of our founding fathers. The wussification of America, and it happens in our schools with the everybody gets a trophy, campaign. Don't worry, little Johnny, little Sarah. Life is not about competition. Everybody's a winner in life. Well, that's just not true. And therefore, it teaches children to grow up to be adults who can't handle it when things don't go their way. So the only response is to cry, wail, revolt, resist, and have pallets of rocks, bricks, and stones delivered to street corners on a busy intersection so that they can be thrown by the radical left through storefront windows. That's how they handle it when things don't go their way, because we've wussified them. We have not taught them. We've given them a safe room during finals week. Don't worry, you don't have to take a final. And we don't teach. We have people, Kansas, 150,000 kids in Kansas can't read at appropriate adult levels. Chicago, same problem, literacy. But we're going to teach you what a globalist woke DEI agenda is all about. Don't worry, kids. Yeah, the wussification of American children has turned out the wussification of the American adult. And all I got to do is look at Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, Mr. Skippy. He's the poster man for the wussification of the American male. It's on purpose. These are agenda items that they throw and cascade down upon us on purpose. The liberal view of America is that it's flawed at its core. We need pain and disruption. We need reimagining to achieve this utopian equality that they dream about. And conservatives, well, we see America as exceptional, built on God's providence and the hard work of our forebears, where order and opportunity lift up all of us. The founders intended a nation under God. Washington invoking divine favor in his inaugural address, and Jefferson affirming natural rights from the Creator. All right. Zach is in the booth today, ladies. We've got this clip from Ruffalo. We've got some time. Let's go. It's not a very long clip. Let me give you a listen to the wisdom of Mark Ruffalo, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the clip.
Of America, the promise of America. We still have that. We have that promise in our DNA. Someone slipped that in there, which creates a possibility for it, right? That's like the moment we're in right now. It's physics. Things have got to come to a point where there's so much movement. It's chaotic. It's chaotic. It's chaotic. Boom, up. Something new comes out of it. Water to steam. There's no other way to actually change. And
there
that's
it is.
painful.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. You heard him. Mark Ruffalo himself. Things have got to come to a point where there's such motion, such chaos that, boom, there's change. And that's how we do it. And he says, we as Americans have this call for freedom in our DNA. Someone put it in our DNA. He doesn't say God. Of course, God put a yearning for freedom in us. But he then goes into the liberal mantra of there's got to be chaos in order to bring about change. It's astounding that they put this stuff out. That is exactly what I've been saying for 5 years. They want the chaos to happen. And if there's not an organic kind of chaos that happens, they'll use anything as the fuse to ignite it. In recent memory, that fuse was George Floyd. And they used that episode to ignite riots throughout the country, chaos. So liberals like Ruffalo want to strip away the intent of God, the intent of the founders, using chaos, which they always exacerbate and fuel by their policies of, just for an example, defunding the police or don't prosecute violent criminals. Liberal district attorneys and states attorney generals don't prosecute violent criminals on purpose because they want them back out on the streets to perpetrate more crime. And that's not my opinion. Evidence of the obvious is sufficient, ladies and gentlemen. You hear these stories throughout the country almost monthly. Another violent criminal who has a rap sheet a mile long, probably even here illegally, has killed an innocent American. How many of those stories do we need to hear? You know, far more many of those kinds of stories happen than their favorite, story about gun violence and so forth. It's done on purpose. They want them back out on the streets so that the chaos can rain down, because I'm telling you, they believe that if they cause enough chaos, the change that they seek to fundamentally transform America will happen. Ruffalo, in his critique, he claims that capitalism creates billionaires, but it fails the rest of us, if we were to listen to that entire clip. But under the free market system, America and other such nations with capitalism in place have lifted millions upon millions, billions probably, of people up out of poverty. And our poverty rate has plummeted as a result of the innovation that the free market and capitalism creates, and therefore saving lives around the world. The reimagining that Ruffalo talks about sounds like socialism, which has failed everywhere. And then the second point is his pain angle, by highlighting, there's got to be cycles of violence. Things have got to get so erratic, so chaotic that boom, change happens. So he's tacitly accepting disorder, chaos, as a step towards change, echoing the liberal tactics in riots, on our border chaos, on the non-prosecution of criminals, all these things that I've mentioned. And then third, of course, is the Obama shadow. His transformation that Ruffalo talks about is meant to bring about bigger government, like Obama's mandates, clashing with the founders' small government ethos. The founders had no intent at all for our government to be so large and bureaucratic as it has become. And Trump is reducing it and tearing that down. He has a lot of work to do, ladies and gentlemen, but he's made great strides. And that's why this resist movement is now kicked up a notch, because the liberals are seeing the agenda and the call of their Messiah, Obama, to begin to fade away and be disassembled right in front of them. And the fourth point about the Ruffalo is that from a conservative rebuttal point of view, we conservatives, we do conserve. We conserve the good. We conserve the divine providence of God and the intent of the founding fathers. We are not perfect, obviously. No one is. And no political organization, whether that's a party or a government or whomever, nothing that is run, led, and managed by human beings is ever going to be perfect. But we do at least aspire to those things. We do aspire to God and the intent of the founders. We do aspire to protect life and create a culture of life. We aspire to less government, more individual freedom. The radical liberal movement wants to destroy all of that. I was getting a few texts about my comment about the wussification of America. I believe it, and thank you for agreeing with me. I think it's true. I think we have wussified entire generations of our kids growing up being coddled with liberal, ideals. I mean, gosh, you look at our schools. Look at what these kids get away with. Look what they're not taught. And I think, again, as I always say, evidence of the obvious is sufficient. You look at these kids and what they lack in teaching, and how our teaching mechanisms have eroded over the years. It's surprising. I used to be a teacher. I mean, I taught high school for a few years back in the day, And I'm old enough to remember the paddle. I'm old enough to remember corporal punishment. And we have, anyway, it's a show topic for another day, perhaps. But we all, I think, can see plain as day that the liberal agenda is to deconstruct what the founders and what the providence of God has put in place here. And as Thanksgiving nears, conservatives, we give thanks for America's blessings. Liberals seem ungrateful, and they wallow in this. America is built on slavery and the pain and the death of others and this and that. Well, remember when you were kids and you were learning about the Pilgrims? I mean, I assume and I pray to God the kids in schools today are still learning about the Pilgrims, but how they endured the hardships that they faced, the Pilgrims, and they trusted in providence. They trusted in God. They didn't demand transformation. They didn't come and say, well, we've landed. We've got to, this is not working after, a few years of hardship. Maybe we should transform the way we think about these things. Today, Mark Ruffalo is worth millions of dollars from the very capitalist Hollywood environment and the capitalist system that he's railing upon. I mean, it's hypocrisy at the highest levels. And the worldview clash that we see sets the stage for what's going on in America today. Liberals are fostering and working for division, and conservatives are working for and defending unity and the foundation of our republic. Again, anyone with any shred of intellectual maturity sees this. And when we build on that liberal conservative divide that is obvious in our country, I mean, I think it's fair and almost it's necessary that we talk about how liberals have this tolerance for unassimilated groups of people within our society that foster, in many times, parallel societies within America, while conservatives demand that integration is necessary and required to preserve our American culture. Which brings me to another critical point that is gaining traction in America today, and that is the Muslims in America issue, getting worse and worse and gaining, like I said, much more attention. Recent polls from groups all across the country reveal that this is it's not an easy picture. It's a complex one. Many Muslims express pride in being American. And public perception, though, shows that Muslims are facing the highest prejudice among religious groups, at least, with a 56% number of Americans holding negative views about them these days. And they don't assimilate, I guess. And Dearborn, Michigan is in the news today, this week, and Michigan. I used to go to Michigan when I was in corporate America. And it was the first time in my life. This is ballpark at about 6 or 7 years ago. And it was the first time in my life that I'd ever seen a mosque in the United States. It was in Detroit. And I go, wow, that's interesting. How about that? A mosque, right? And now they're everywhere, it seems. In these communities, when I was in the Detroit area, Dearborn and all that, when I was in corporate America working to negotiate labor contracts and collective bargaining agreements on the behalf of companies, they were actually parts of town that were deemed, quote unquote, no-go zones, where the police just didn't go in. Dearborn, Detroit had certain pockets because they had Sharia-influenced laws and norms there that would reportedly, I didn't go into these nodes, so I'm not a firsthand witness, but reportedly the Sharia law takes the place and precedent over United States law. Now we've got almost all states, I believe. I'll have to check this. I'll fact check myself, but I think every state in the country has, at least to some degree, laws on their books within their state that prevent Sharia law from usurping United States law. I know in Missouri and Kansas and some other, I think that I'm right, that all states do to some degree. But liberals, when they see this non-ability or this refusal to assimilate, they see it as diversity. and the strength that diversity brings to America, rejecting American exceptionalism for multiculturalism. Okay, and that's it. They disguise multiculturalism as compassion and acceptance, when in fact, what they really want to do, again, is to use it, multiculturalism, to dilute America's identity so that they can more quickly do the dirty deed of their Messiah, fundamentally transform America. Thank you, Barack Obama. And that's part and parcel, and perhaps the reason why they opened the borders, to expedite the fundamental transformation of America with chaos and with more people flooding the country in hopes of diluting the American identity. Now, conservatives clearly align with the founding fathers' intent, a melting pot here where immigrants adopt our customs as they come in here legally. George Washington himself wrote in 1790 that America offers, and I quote, "to bigotry no sanction, but expected assimilation." Okay, you're welcome here, dear brothers and sisters from far off lands, but you've got to assimilate. You have got to become Americans. You cannot have parallel societies within the United States. Clearly that doesn't work. Clearly that was not the intent of the founders, and clearly that's a danger to the republic itself. Benjamin Franklin also warned against those who didn't adopt our ways. John Adams, the famous quote, you've probably all heard it: the United States Republic is meant for a moral and religious people. It cannot sustain anything less than that, and it itself won't be sustained. So the concerns are real that are out there in the news, and I acknowledge them. Islamist groups failing, refusing to assimilate. I am not blanketing all Muslims, not at all, but it's a real threat, and there's enough of it in the news to say it looks as if we've got pockets of problems in this republic where people are not assimilating, and liberals, with their desire to inflict more chaos, seem to embrace it all by downplaying it. And when they downplay it, they invite more division. Conservatives, like in Texas, and we're going to talk about this next hour, so I'll give you just a little preview. But Governor Abbott down in Texas has really taken some hardline approaches, and it's a good thing. The Muslim Brotherhood as a domestic terror group. We'll get into that next hour, but that's the right path. And we need to get the radical groups, and not just Muslim radical, any radical group. We need to take a good hard look at them, because we need to come together, folks. We need Americans to stand shoulder to shoulder. And I talk about EMP Shield and all that at the top, as the sponsor for the show. And there are people in the country who want to do us harm. But we've got to, I don't want to have another 9/11. I don't want to have a mass tragedy event. I don't want to be brought together that way. Thank you very much. I want to be brought together by a friendly and meaningful and passionate debate about the issues. I want to be brought together by understanding clearly what the founding fathers intended for this republic. And yes, I see the comments that you've all made on the app and on social media. Clement, yep. The 6 or 7 members of our Congress, a mixture of people from the Senate and from our House of Representatives, who called on the United States military to disobey the commander-in-chief. It's another in a long series of their attempts to cause division. And in this case, it is truly sedition. I mean, there's no escaping it. And Trump has issued no illegal orders. It's one thing for these Democrats, communist socialists, to have an opinion about Trump's orders, but there has been no illegal orders given and no indication that Trump would ever do such a thing. That's what they want to, again, sowing division. And again, I was commenting to some of the members of the Real Talk Radio staff in a text that was a private text. I was saying, we've drifted so far from what the founding fathers intended in this country, and we have this watered down, wussified view sometimes of these kinds of things. I do believe, and I mentioned in the previous hour, that, I told you the story about the satanic mass that was allowed on the steps of the Capitol in Kansas, with this statement yesterday that came out from these 6 or 7 members of Congress. It's the same kind of thing. They sow division and discord and chaos. It's what they want to do. They believe that it will work to their benefit and convince us all that somehow or some way we need big government in here to help get back to help tear down America and rebuild it in their image. Because not only did Barack Obama say fundamentally transform America, remember the Biden campaign, they were saying build back better. They were piggybacking off of each other. We're going to fundamentally transform America, then we're going to build it back better. And when they say that, and I've seen excerpts of texts and messages and conferences that these liberals have been on, and the build back better mantra is they purposefully omitted the first word, because the full mantra was destroy and then build back better. So they leave that out. But I'm just telling you, they want to tear down America. They want to tear it away from the intent of the founders. They never call us a republic. Note that, point A. And then point B, just watch. Just watch and listen to their behavior and to what they say. And the clip that we had from Mark Ruffalo said it very well. And Fish is in the booth, I think. Fish, we've got that clip from Ruffalo. I'm gonna let the people listen to it again here in just a second. So just giving you a heads up to get it ready. But Ruffalo says it out loud. Now, in the extended interview, he's talking about how he hates capitalism. Capitalism has just been destroyed. It creates more billionaires and takes care of but you see, he even says it there. Capitalism creates more billionaires, but then it takes care of the billionaires instead of the common people. Well, the point of capitalism, ladies and gentlemen, is to give the mechanism to people to chase and find and to discover and to achieve the thing that we call the American dream. Capitalism gives you the tools and the opportunity to do that. That's the promise of America. The promise of America is not to make everybody a millionaire for doing nothing. There will always be people in this country who are just not either capable or have no desire. Now, if you are genuinely impaired, if you are handicapped either physically or intellectually, we have a moral duty to take care of you, and we will. If, however, you want to buy in to the new communist socialist, formerly known as Democrat Party's slavery, which is their entitlement system, and if you want to sit on your porch all day and drink Schlitz malt liquor beer and smoke the items that you just got from the neighborhood dispensary and be nothing but a zombie, that's your choice. But we're not going to pay for it. We're not going to pay for it. Capitalism gives you the ability and the mechanism and the market to be whatever you want. And we conservatives just see it. We understand it. We live it and we breathe it and we pursue it. Liberals don't. And notice that most of the liberals that are out there talking about this, like Mark Ruffalo, are themselves millionaires. Hello, Jerry Bailey. Good to see you out there listening. Elaine, good to see you as well. Fish, let's go ahead and let them listen to this clip one more time of Mark Ruffalo. I want to give them a flavor of this thing and begin to and to continue to discuss what's really going on here between the lines.
The vision of America, the promise of America. We still have that. We have that promise in our DNA. Someone slipped that in there, which creates a possibility for it, right? That's like the moment we're in right now. It's physics. Things have got to come to a point where there's so much movement. It's chaotic. It's chaotic. It's chaotic. Boom, up. Something new comes out of it. Water to steam. there's no other way to actually change.
There
And
it
that's
is. All right.
painful.
All right. There it is. You see, Mark Ruffalo himself gives us the recipe for the change that they want. Chaos. Things have got to become so chaotic. Until boom, something happens. Folks, look at the last 5 years. I beg you, I plead with you. Talk about this with your family and friends. Look what they've done. And I'm just talking about the past 5 years. We could go back in time for 180 years and look what the radical liberal agenda has really been doing since the time of the Rockefeller family, the Carnegie, and the Dewey family. All of those guys avowed socialists, by the way, who used capitalism to buy the American educational systems and supplant their curriculum ideas ahead of what was best for America. But all I'm asking is just to look at the last 5 years. Under the Biden-Harris regime, what did we see? Did we see calm, cool, collected law and order, or did we see purposeful chaos? The masks, remember the masks? I've said it before, I'll say it again. The masks were never about your health. Never. The masks were always political signaling. And at the very beginning, they were a sign of animus towards President Trump. That's it. That's all the masks were. And the people that wear them today, they've adopted the mask as part of the radical left liberal uniform. So Ruffalo's saying and admitting that we've got to see the chaos, we've got to see the change, this kinetic change. And you'll notice at the beginning of that clip, he was talking about there's something in our DNA. Somebody put this in our DNA that we want to strive. Well, he's talking about God. He won't say God because he doesn't believe in God, is my guess. I don't know Mark Ruffalo personally. I don't know if he believes in God. But what he said in this clip is indicative of what the radical liberal movement wants, and that is chaos. To drive the change to fundamentally transform America. And this week, as we approach Thanksgiving, I think it's appropriate that we talk about what the Founding Fathers actually intended for this republic. And that is primarily that we're a republic, not a democracy. Every time they say it on the news, it's one of my top 5 pet peeves. The President Trump, that Doug Billings, he's a threat to our democracy. Well, we don't have a democracy. Thank you very much. We have a republic. And in Texas, what's going on? I was talking about really what I was intending to talk more about this hour was how we recognize people who do not want to assimilate into our republic. The Muslim Brotherhood and the Council on American Islamic Relations, otherwise known as CAIR, C-A-I-R, in case you're from Raytown, Missouri, both of those organizations deemed domestic terror groups by Governor Greg Abbott down in Texas. And part of that, what do you call it? The denotation, part of that assignment of being named a domestic terror group means that you cannot own land within Texas state boundaries, and you can't own state business. And so, I want to look at this because, again, the rising tide of cultures that are creating parallel societies within ours. Governor Abbott cited that the reason he did this was because these two particular groups have ties to extremism. The Muslim Brotherhood, they continually call for this global caliphate, and then the Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, they have links to Hamas. And so conservatives are trying to channel security for our nation and for our American identity. And meanwhile, liberals will begin to cry soon, believe me, Islamophobia, racism, prioritizing their feelings over the safety of American citizens. But Texas embodies a conservative vigilance versus a liberal tolerance that risks American safety from the liberal perspective. And these parallel societies, we've got to get a grip on this. It's a real issue. Everyone is welcome here, don't get me wrong, but we have got to assimilate, and we've got to do it legally. And when you zero in on how the liberals, with their open border, permissive stance on immigration, including a free pass to not assimilate, it's actually fueling the creation of these so-called parallel societies right here in America, while we conservatives are the ones who demand real integration to safeguard the shared cultures and the unity that America is supposed to be all about. Do they still teach American history anymore, ladies and gentlemen? I mean, really, it makes you wonder. And of course, that's a rhetorical question. No, we don't. At least not as it should be. You see, it's not just some abstract database that's hitting home for millions of Americans who are growing increasingly nervous and worried about radical Muslims and the elements that they have carved out of their own little worlds within our borders, creating worlds that often thumb their nose at the very assimilation that made this country great. And so again, as we approach Thanksgiving, a time where we give thanks for the providence that brought diverse people together, thank you, under one American banner, thank you very much, this issue couldn't be more timely. So ultimately, it's about when people come over here and immigration, assimilation, ultimately, it is about gratitude for a nation that works because we all pull in the same direction. We're not splintered off into isolated enclaves in Dearborn, Michigan, or wherever, or from West Central Texas, where Elaine is, or from in Kansas, where Jerry is, or whoever, and where Clement is, all of the people watching and listening to the program. First off, we've got to define what we mean by parallel societies. Okay, so these are essentially self-contained communities where groups live according to their own rules, their own laws, and their own norms that run counter or in parallel to the mainstream societies. In context of some Muslim immigrant groups, this might mean neighborhoods where Sharia principles influence daily life more than the United States Constitution does, where education and businesses and even disputes between people happen outside of the established American system. And so people get involved and they begin to think about this. Think tanks like the Hudson Institute, they've been sounding the alarm on this particular issue for years, warning that organizations tied to the Muslim Brotherhood are actively pushing for these setups as a stepping stone to introducing Sharia elements into American life. It's not about everyday Muslims going about their business. It's about radical fringes who are building walls within our country instead of bridges and assimilating into it. Again, the parallel groups and what these radical liberal groups are doing, creating chaos. You see the common thread? I've told you time and time again, one of the goals of the radical liberal movement, their agenda, chaos. And the evidence that these think tanks come up with and that they discuss, I mean, it's pretty compelling when you look at it, when you read it. A recent 2025 report from a group called Program on Extremism, it's out of George Washington University. And they dive into the Muslim Brotherhood's history in the United States, showing that they've been working since the 1960s to infiltrate American institutions and create networks that operate semi-independently within America. Or you've got, again, the Hudson Institute and their analysis. They argue that if American Muslims from these parallel societies, if they do create them, it becomes easier for Islamist groups to advocate for Sharia law in those bubbles in communities that will erode the unity that the founding fathers of America envisioned for this country. And yet again, a group called I-24 News in a 2025 report this year highlighted internal documents that revealed long-term effects by the Muslim Brotherhood to influence United States policy and society from within our borders. Now, these are not conspiracy theories, ladies and gentlemen. These are documented, peer-reviewed strategies and articles from groups and organizations, think tanks, as some people call them, that see what the Muslim Brotherhood and other groups like them represent. And they see assimilation as a threat to their ideology. They're not going to give up their ideology. And it goes to my point. Radical Islam, if you're a radical Islamist, a radical Muslim, you have no interest in reform. None. You're radicalized. And we all know, I think, what that means. Radical Muslims want to blow stuff up. Now, other radical groups blow stuff up too. I'm just saying. I mean, I can pick on radical groups all day long. I'm just talking about the Muslim problem right now, and it's a growing concern in America. Looking at the exceptionalism that America is and juxtaposing what we conservatives believe and know to be true in terms of what the founders intended here. But before the break, I could go through a long list. As I was looking at the news and doing some show prep this morning, there's a long list of research that talks about the radical Muslim issue, the Muslim Brotherhood, the perceived threat, I guess, if you could, if that, I guess I'll use that word. I just did. The perceived threat that radical Muslim groups present. And I also am quick to remind you that there are radical groups that aren't Muslim in this country that represent threats just as well. So here we are. The Hamilton College Muslim American poll, Pew Research has a poll where they try to gauge how much of a problem this really is and what Americans think. Here's what I know. I'm going to cut to the chase. Is that conservatives are all for legal immigration, 100%. But you've also, once you immigrate, you've got to assimilate. Immigrate, assimilate. And you've got to be part of the club. You've got to be part of the group, part of the family, part of the country, part of the republic that the founders envisioned and with the help of God's guidance and inspiration created for us. And there's no escaping that. We cannot have in this country parallel societies. That will not work. It's not what they intended. And so we will not have that. We will not. Conservatives, I think when we talk about solutions, because I think this topic begs the question, well, then how do we fix this? Well, I think Texas took a great first step. You identify what the radical groups are and you label them as such. The Muslim Brotherhood, and you're not afraid to say it out loud. So I think more states, governors, you're not going to get the blue states to do this, but the red states, they need to follow that lead, and they need to start doing it. If I were governor, I would be doing it too. You've got to call it what it is, and that's what we need, and it's part of the reason, part of the pathway for conservative victories in elections is to put forth candidates that are not afraid to say this kind of stuff. We talk a lot about, well, we didn't have enough people show up from our side. Not enough people showed up in this last election and we didn't do very well. Well, and they look, they'll talk about fraud and abuse and numbers, but do you ever really look at the candidates? We don't put up candidates that are bold and unapologetically patriotic who talk about this stuff out loud and often. So as solutions for the problem that we're talking about, parallel societies, non-assimilation of, in this case, radical Muslim groups, you got to start with basics. I think, and that is basics is education. Our educational system has been taken over, obviously. Now, Linda McMahon, I'm working to get her on this program. I'm really working hard to get her on the program. They are still working to deconstruct the Department of Education. Don't lose hope on that. They're still working to deconstruct that. But we have to begin with education, starting with basics like mandatory English classes. Imagine that in schools, and these people must become proficient. They must be able to read and write English. And we even have a problem with our own American citizenry in that regard. We've got, Chicago, Illinois, terrible record on literacy. New York, Kansas has 150, saw a report earlier this year, 150 kids in Kansas can't read appropriately. This is not acceptable. In Kansas, you can't have it. Now, you somewhat expect it in a place like Chicago or New York, where liberals have run the show for years. But no matter where this is taking place, it's not acceptable. So education, mandatory English classes, and civics. Can we please get back to teaching how our government works? Civics, in addition to just honest, good American, truthful history. Back to the basics. Fosters assimilation, ladies and gentlemen. It all fosters assimilation. Let's get back to saying the Pledge of Allegiance, please, every morning in our grade schools. And let's get rid of the LGBTQ kook flags, the rainbow flags. Get rid of them. No more of them in our public schools. And let's get the American flag back up front and center. And let's start teaching kids the beauty and the exceptionalism of America. And we've got to dump this whole mantra and diatribe about how we are built on the backs of slaves and it is an evil country. We have murdered. Okay, so look, we need reparations, by the way, Doug. Oh, okay, hang on. So I'm Irish. I have Irish ancestry, okay? And my folks, my people were enslaved. A few of them were. And they were pressed into service to build the railroads in this country. I don't scream at Amtrak for a free pass for life on the railroads that my ancestors built. We've got to get to a point where we tell these people the reparations that you get is the fact that you get to live in America. That's your reparation, jackwagons. That's your reparation. You get to live in the United States of America. Now get to work and make your life better. Earn it. Don't beg to someone else for more entitlements. You're self-advocating for slavery when you do that. Give me free money. I want free. My people deserve it. And I don't care what color you are. I don't care what race you are. If you're screaming for, gosh, I mean, we need it. We need to be bold. We need to be brave and call it what it is. Reparations. My backside. No way. Your reparation is you get to live in the best country this world has ever known, and you get the ability to use your God-given talents, gifts, and treasures to find, pursue, and realize the American dream. There you go. Vetting immigrants is part of the solution here. Of course, we vet people for security reasons, but also for values alignment. Do they embrace American exceptionalism? Policies like expanded English proficiency requirements in schools and workplaces so that we don't have truck drivers killing people on our highways because they can't read traffic signs. It could bridge the gap. We got to get back. There was a time where we did it. Language mastery boosts economic prosperity by up to 20 to 30%. Think about that. And federal action that's inspired by what Texas is doing, calling these radical groups out, could include, I think, a new discussion that needs to take place as we approach Thanksgiving and welcoming legal immigration, right? Vetting reforms nationally. We have got to institute vetting. We've got to do it for the people that want to immigrate into our country. And by the way, as a side note, for all of you conservatives out there, we have also got to vet our candidates who want to serve in public office. People who want to put an R behind their name have got to earn the right to be able to do that. And you do it by vetting them. Now, if they're in office, you've already got their voting record. You can pretty much tell where they stand on the issues that are important to us. But if they're not, you and your local county, wherever you live, you've got to get with your Republican groups, your Republican committee men and women, and come up with a vetting process, a questionnaire, for lack of a better term, and get these candidates who have never been in office on record as to how they will vote and how they will behave once they are in office, and hold them accountable to that. That's vetting of candidates. I happen to think it's crucial because anybody in most places that you live can go to the county clerk and register as a Republican and run in an election. And you could have been a Democrat. You could be a Democrat. It doesn't matter because you know that you can't win as a Democrat in that particular county or in that particular district. And so you want to be a little bit sneaky and you register as a Republican when in fact you are a Democrat, and you end up winning the election. And then once you're in office, poof, it is completely different. And I'm reminded of all of this as I look at the news feed today, and we've got the funeral of Dick Cheney going on, where there is the largest world gathering now of swamp-dwelling creatures ever gathered at one time in recent memory. Not everybody there is part of the swamp, but that's what that is. It's more notable who's not there than who is, in my opinion. But if you pause for a moment and you picture this, back in the late 19th century and the early 20th centuries, waves upon waves of immigrants were pouring into this country via Ellis Island, right? Irish, like my people, fleeing the potato famine, Italians escaping poverty, and they faced brutal discrimination. There were signs out there. I mean, I remember my great-grandfather in pictures, in family albums, "No Irish need apply here." Italians were called derogatory names, and even lynched, Italians were down in the South. But here's the key: they assimilated. They assimilated into our society. They learned English. They entered into trades, welding, carpentry, etc. They built churches that blended with American life. And by the second generation, these people were fully woven into the fabric of our society. Contrast that with today's debates about what we're talking about. And there are some Muslim communities in places like, as I mentioned, Dearborn, Michigan, or Hamtramck, Michigan, where entire city councils are comprised of Muslims. We are in on the cusp of the holiday season here, with Thanksgiving just a week away. And it's the reason I'm talking about this to a degree. I see the comments that some of you are making and so forth with regards to people who are trying to do us harm and so forth. We look at the radical liberal movement in America talking about the chaos they want to try to perpetuate and cascade down upon us. It's all out there. But we remain hopeful in our conservative approach because, we know, first of all, there's more of us than there are of them. That's just the truth. Well, the trick is for us to get people to actually show up, to get to a place where they can become activists like the radical left have. And we need our people to wake up and become involved at the local level. And that's the key to all of this. The liberal worldview, if it is left unchecked, it increasingly invites what they call multiculturalism, which is multiculturalism is a disguise for chaos, because within the liberal model of multiculturalism, you are enabled then to create these silos in our societies, these parallel societies, while conservatives fight to protect the unity that made those who came through Ellis Island and other ports of entry legally. We try to make it so that those people can thrive here. And when we look back, I'm a big fan of history. When we look at history, in the 19th century, again, Irish and Italians, they formed tight-knit neighborhoods. Think Little Italy or Irish wards in Boston, right? But they didn't stay parallel. They evolved through their public school systems, through unions, through military service, through a whole array of things. The Manhattan Institute shows that by 1920, segregation indices in this country dropped as they intermarried, and these immigrants began to move up economically. More people move up. Of course, when you assimilate, you're going to move up economically faster. than if you don't assimilate. And today we need that same kind of push within the Muslim community. Many do assimilate beautifully. Hey, if I'm about anything, I'm about the truth. Not all Muslims are radical. You understand that, ladies and gentlemen. But radicals hinder that assimilation. There's a Muslim expert out there, Jan Harisi, who says and who warns that Muslim parallel societies breed extremism. And he echoes the same concerns that we've been talking about here, that these unassimilated pockets represent dangers. There is an economic drain, a huge one. Non-assimilation costs billions of dollars in welfare, lost taxes, right? Immigrants who don't integrate earn 15 to 20% less, which strains our systems and our economies. And if they begin then to insert Sharia influences and alternatives that bypass the United States, its laws and its regulations and so forth, that costs you and me as taxpayers. So I think that it can't be any clearer. America was forged by a conglomeration of visionaries. White men signed our Declaration of Independence. That doesn't mean that America was founded just by white men, ladies and gentlemen. We were founded and built by an array of people, engineers, ingenuity, capitalists, women, fundamentalists, Catholics, Protestants, diverse and talented and dedicated to the dream of the American founding fathers and the inspiration of God himself. As I've said, in America, as we approach Thanksgiving, it's good to remember that we Americans have 3 divinely inspired works. We have the Bible, of course, but we also have our American Declaration of Independence and our Constitution, both of which were inspired by God and written by men. And so we do well not to brag about it, but to be humbly inspired by that. We are the most gifted, blessed nation on earth. And we as people are the most blessed on earth. Ladies and gentlemen, no matter where you are right now, and no matter what you're going through in your life, and I mean this, no matter what, you, my friends, have a pack of blessing upon your back. You have a pack of blessings on your back. And if this show achieves anything, I would hope that one day it helps to enter into the lives of people to fulfill what I believe to be the meaning of life is. And that is you and I begin to teach each other and encourage each other that we do have those blessings, that no matter what we're going through. I mean, you could think of whatever tragedy, whatever adversity, whatever challenge, we have a pack of blessings, and we need to know that. And we don't always see the blessings, and that's another thing that we need to realize. The blessings need to be brought to life, and that's what conservatism does. It brings the dreams and the blessings to life. Can you imagine how desperately depressed and horribly sad liberals must be to not believe in God, to not believe in the divine providence of God, to believe that America is not exceptional, built on tragedy, slavery, and death? What a gruesome way to go through life. No one is perfect. Life in this world, this current life in this current world, will never be perfect. And nothing that we do as human beings will ever be perfect. But again, as I said in the first hour of this show today, at least we conservatives aspire to follow God. At least we aspire to build up the kingdom of God on earth. And at least we aspire to build up a culture of life. And isn't that something to be thankful for? Isn't that the divine providence of God and the founders something that we can be thankful for this year? Well, we've got a lot to do before now and Thanksgiving, but ladies and gentlemen, food for thought. I'll see you again tomorrow. God bless you, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, we are in this together. Believe it, for the Republic. Cheers.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the set of my show, Doug Billings. Hey, my good friends at EMP Shield, that's electromagnetic pulse, in case you're from Raytown, Missouri. Electromagnetic pulse could wipe out your home electrical system, could wipe out your vehicle. And thanks to the radical liberal agenda that was put forth under Administrator Biden and Vice Pretender Harris, there are lots of people in this country who want to do us harm. And maybe an EMP device would be their chosen weapon. But EMP Shield gives you a device that can protect you. This little baby here goes on your home outlets, a computer, a router, whatever you want to protect. And then they also have a larger model like this. You can still hold it in the palm of your hand that goes on your vehicle battery so that you can get out of trouble from point A to point B. EMPshield.com. Promo code Doug, ladies and gentlemen. Save yourself, save your property. EMPshield.com. Promo code Doug. We're in this together, folks. Believe it. For the Republic. Cheers.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.